Super Mario Bros. Was the first American video game film. It was the first game movie to be released theatrically in America, and only the second theatrical release overall. Previous to this, there was the Mario anime I talked about yesterday, as well as a few television films such as Fatal Fury and Samurai Showdown. It even beats out direct-to-video movies, as the first direct-to-video movie based on a game was the sequel to Final Fantasy V, which came out a year after Super Mario Bros. So when most people think of the original video game movie, they do think of this one. And also common is the thought that it set a precedent for video game movies having very little to do with their source material, and for sucking badly. Super Mario Bros. Is one of those movies that is just undeniably bad. You might have enjoyed it as a kid, but that's about as far as it goes. And you have to wonder why Nintendo would license their most popular and well-known video game franchise to be butchered like this. But, well, it was the first time. And it's unlikely to happen again. Notice that there haven't been any American movies based on Nintendo franchises since Super Mario Bros., only Japanese ones. That being said, let's take a look at the movie. The first thing that you'll notice is that it has one hell of a cast. Mario is played by Bob Hoskins, an Academy Award-winning actor, and Luigi is played by John Leguizamo. It was one of his earlier roles, but he's a damn good actor and a great comedian. There's also Dennis Hopper as the evil Koopa. He's not called Bowser in this one. And Samantha Mathis as the Princess Daisy. Right there you can see some issues. Even though it's a great cast, it doesn't make sense. Dennis Hopper makes for a great bad guy, and the other actors are all consummate professionals who are great at what they do. But who thought of this cast? Usually you think of Mario and Luigi as being Italian, even though now Nintendo claims they were born in the Mushroom Kingdom. But they have Italian names, and they tend to like pasta and pizza and all that. Now, Mario was named after an actual Italian guy who owned one of the buildings Nintendo was housed in early on. And Luigi was named after an Italian restaurant called Mario and Luigi's. So they cast a British guy as Mario and a Hispanic guy as Luigi. Obviously, they're not considered twins in the movie either, as Luigi looks like a young man in his early 20s, and Mario is balding, so obviously Mario is a lot older. And they even hand-wave this away by saying that Mario helped raise his little brother. The inclusion of Princess Daisy is a really weird choice for me, as she was at the time an obscure character in the games who had only appeared in Super Mario Land. The princess that most people knew was Peach, or Toadstool as she was then called in America. So it's weird that they used Daisy. I guess they chose her because she's supposed to be a love interest for Luigi, and if it was Peach, people would expect her to be with Mario. Mario has a girlfriend named Daniela, which is weird because she's one of the very few characters not named after someone or something from the games. I personally think they should have called her Pauline, but she's a minor character, so it doesn't matter. The movie starts out with a badly animated section about the dinosaurs being destroyed by a meteor, but the narrator claims they might have wound up being banished to a parallel world because, why not? Then it cuts to Brooklyn in the 70s, where a mysterious panicked woman drops off a baby at a church, except instead of a baby, it's an egg, which hatches a baby. The baby is a pendant made from a rock, and shortly after leaving the church, the woman is accosted by a weird-looking asshole dressed like a general, who she calls Koopa. He's looking for the rock and kills her when she doesn't have it. Okay. Anyway, cut to the present, and we got Mario and Luigi. The brothers are plumbers working in Brooklyn, but they don't get much work because all of their jobs get poached by a rival called Scapelli, who seems to also be a mobster. After getting screwed out of yet another plumbing job, they meet Daisy, an archaeologist who was called to dig up some dinosaur bones that were found on a construction site, another Scapelli venture. Scapelli is leaning on Daisy to get the fuck off his site, but of course she's having none of that. Luigi gets a load of her, and of course he's immediately smitten and offers her a ride, and with a bit of prompting from Mario, he asks her out on a date. They go on a double date with Mario and his girlfriend and are being stalked by two goons named Iggy and Spike, who were looking for a princess and have kidnapped several women in Brooklyn, but coming up with the wrong one each time. This time they're sure Daisy is the right one, but the two numbskulls capture Daniela instead. Daisy takes Luigi to look at the excavation site, but Scapelli's goons flood the tunnel underneath it. They call Mario, who fixes the pipes, but then Iggy and Spike show up and this time successfully snatch Daisy. Mario and Luigi chase them and wind up coming across a portal to another dimension, which Daisy comes out of, briefly, screaming for help. They manage to grab the pendant around her neck, which is the same rock from the beginning of the movie, so apparently Daisy was the baby hatched from an egg. Okay. Anyway, they go through the portal and wind up in a fucked up dystopian version of Manhattan called Dinotopolis. I don't even want to go into too much detail, so I'll explain the whole thing in one fell swoop. The meteor that supposedly destroyed the dinosaurs actually separated them from us in an alternate world where they evolved into intelligent beings. The makers of the movie have no idea what evolution is, as the supposedly reptilian descendants of the dinosaurs have skin and hair, and apparently Koopa has both a machine and guns that can de-evolve or evolve people instantly. Okay. The filmmakers always seem confused about who the hell Koopa is also. In the intro, he's dressed like a general, and when you first meet him in the present, he's called President Koopa. And there are billboards everywhere saying, "Vote Koopa." But then they start calling him King Koopa and say that he deposed the old king after de-evolving him into a fungus with his machine. Okay. No, so wait, really? So the king evolved from fungus, but the king's daughter was hatched out of an egg, and then Bowser usurps the king, but some citizens call him the president, and some call him the king, and even though he's more like a dictator than anything, he has elections and urges people to vote for him? Okay. Apparently this parallel world really sucks, as there's almost no resources, and almost the entire world is a desert, except for the one city. Koopa's plan is to merge his realm with Earth and take over both. Sound familiar? Yeah. Apparently Koopa is Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat. To do this, he needs the rock pendant Daisy has, which is actually part of the meteor that caused this mess and split Earth into two. If he puts the meteor shard back in, the two Earths will merge into one, and then I'll guess he'll probably get his ass kicked by the superior militaries of our world, but he didn't think of that. His main weapons are guns that shoot fireballs and repainted super scopes that can de-evolve people, because that's totally how it works. Okay, I don't even want to talk about the plot anymore. It's a goddamn mess. Along the way, there's references to the games all over the place. Mario has the rock, but it gets stolen by a fat chick named Big Bertha, who has thwomp boots and makes her jump really high. Later on, they get it back, of course. There's a street musician named Toad, who was played by the indie musician Mojo Nixon, the worst thing he's ever done, who gets devolved into a big, tall lizard man with a tiny head, the movie's version of Goombas. The movie can't decide if it's serious or funny, whether it's for kids, or it's for adults, or if it's supposed to be a frightening dystopian film or a dippy comedy. The soundtrack clashes with the dark tone of the film, the characters are forgettable, and the plot just doesn't make any damn sense. Apparently, Daisy is the only one who can handle the raw power of the rock. Koopa's assistant betrays him and tries to take over herself, but just trying to put the rock back in the meteor kills her. Koopa, however, thinks Mario has the rock and they fight, though Mario blows him up with a bomb and then uses the de-evolution guns to turn him into a T-Rex, and then they hit him again and he turns into slime. The king returns to normal, because, why not, and Daisy elects to stay behind and stabilize everything, despite the fact that Luigi has some serious blue balls for her at this point. At the end, they try and hint at a sequel that never happened by having Daisy show up at Mario's apartment yelling for help, but thankfully it never came through. I just don't know what to say. Very little of the film makes sense. Honestly, I actually skipped over about a third of the plot because it's like beating a dead horse. I can only make fun of it for being nonsensical so much before it starts to get mean. The acting is good, but they almost had nothing to work with. The script is just horrible, and apparently the actors were all miserable because they had signed on to an earlier version of the script that got rewritten several times, and they were stuck in a movie that has almost nothing to do with Super Mario Bros. The special effects are good, and there's a tiny bit of bad early 90s CGI, but it's only a little bit, so for the most part they use practical effects, and this is where they show off the budget. but really, it's too disjointed to be fun. I remember seeing the first trailer, and it was marketed as a serious movie. Actually, the original trailer almost markets it as a horror movie before even saying that it's Super Mario Brothers. But there's too much goofy stuff, a dippy soundtrack, and just bad jokes to take it seriously. But you can't enjoy it as a whimsical comedy, as it bogs you down with the dreary dystopia and attempts at taking things seriously. Bob Hoskins once said that it was the worst thing he ever did. John Leguizamo straight out said that it sucked. And I think Dennis Hopper said the director was an asshole. Apparently, Leguizamo and Hoskins spent most of the film drunk because they couldn't deal with how shit it was. But yeah, it seems easy to dogpile on the movie and call it a piece of shit, and maybe they've had enough, so I'll stop now and just say that the movie basically fails at everything it tries to do, but it at least has some good acting and effects. Believe it or not, this is not as bad as it gets, so I'm being generous with my score here. I'm going to give it a 4 out of a possible 10.